This week on Technicolor Blood, Terrence and I discuss the Captain Marvel trailer, and we'll also talk about what will hopefully be the final update in the James Gunn saga.
We'll also review the movie Revenge and discuss the genre revenge.
That and a whole lot more. Technicolor Blood starts right now. Technicolor Blood, welcome back, guys. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. We have plenty to talk about again this week. Terrence, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to talking about all things movies and specifically one trailer.
Yes, there are many, many things to cover, so let's jump right into it. I want to start with some news about Disney. Disney's streaming service, as I'm sure most of you know out there, is going to be launching 2019. At least last I heard, it was still going to be launched 2019.
It's a rumor.
News came down this week that as part of the new streaming service, they're going to have 2 series devoted to popular Marvel Universe characters, Loki and the Scarlet Witch. And when I read that headline, I thought, okay, that's interesting. I wonder who they're going to get to play them. It turns out they actually are going to retain the 2 actors who play those roles, specifically Tom Hiddleston. I was a little bit surprised that he would take that project on, but maybe I'm overrating how popular his movie career has been. But you know, that's an interesting step and probably a pretty good way for them to launch their service. I don't know if it's going to be ready to go by the time they actually launch, but it seems to be a pretty strong step forward. What do you think?
I think the thing that's really interesting about this is where does this leave the Marvel shows that are currently on Netflix, right? We know they're going to be eventually pulled off of Netflix. The idea was that they would be rolled over into the Disney streaming service. Does that mean that these will now cross over with those new Disney streaming specific shows? If so, does that mean that the current Netflix Marvel television universe will be connected to the ongoing Marvel movie universe? Mm-hmm. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, all we needed with the MCU was more content.
Right.
And more questions about how everything intersects.
Technically, none of the characters that are currently on those Netflix shows have a counterpart in the movies. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that they could make them all part of a shared universe. I mean, of course, fans would lose their minds if the guy who plays Daredevil suddenly starts playing Daredevil in a Marvel movie. Yeah, in the past there's never been any sort of hint that would happen. In fact, I think it's been made pretty clear by everyone involved that was never going to happen. But, you know, with the whole Disney taking over the universe, I think everything is just up for grabs.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Daredevil series fine, but I can't imagine that guy holding up a feature film. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I think that's a pretty interesting little tidbit, and obviously they'll spin more off if that's successful. And I kind of wonder if maybe this is just the first release in a series of upcoming leaks about, you know, more plans they might have as that gets closer and closer.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if they're going to do a series about the Scarlet Witch. Does that mean that Vision is going to show up in that show?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, it's got to be a safe bet.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see, I mean, we'll probably never know this, but just because I'm curious about how the behind the scenes stuff work, I'm curious to see how they're going to work that out with getting all the original cast members to reprise some of these roles. If it's one of those things where they only sign on to do one season or one miniseries, however many episodes they're going to be. I think I saw something that said that at least the Loki series is going to be a limited run of 10 episodes. And then I assume that'll be the end of that.
Unless it's successful.
Unless it's successful and Tom Hiddleston decides he wants to continue doing television.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of a great idea because you look at those Avengers movies, the casts are so huge.
Sure.
And so many of those characters, like you pointed out, could never support their own movie on their own.
Yeah.
But this is a great outlet for that.
Right. And, you know, selfishly, I'm a big fan of the Loki character. Mm-hmm. And I don't think this is spoilers for anyone who's already seen the first Infinity War movie. You know what happens to Loki in that movie. But the way he goes out isn't the way that some of the other characters go out. So he actually should be dead.
Right.
He doesn't get the Thanos treatment. So if this is the only way for me to get some Loki in my life, I'm good with that.
Fair enough.
So another Another bit of news here, bit of development news. Mike Flanagan, if you don't recognize that name, don't worry. I don't really know who he is either. He's got several directing credits, but I don't really recognize any of them. He's going to be directing a movie called Doctor Sleep, which is a sequel to The Shining.
No.
The Stanley Kubrick classic, and you know that when you hear Kubrick's name on the show, it's treading on holy ground because we're big fans. But apparently in this movie, if you're familiar with The Shining, the Jack Nicholson character's son, Danny Torrance, Ewan McGregor is going to play the grown-up Danny Torrance.
You're just making me more angry. Every word you're saying is making me more angry.
Now, come on, you like Ewan McGregor at least.
Yeah, I do. That's fair.
And it also stars Rebecca Ferguson, which mentioned on a previous episode about Mission Impossible. She was the girl that I went on and on about how much I liked her in Rogue Nation. And then in the newer Mission Impossible movie, she had a significant role in that as well. So she also stars in it. So yeah, I kind of feel like we probably feel pretty similar on this one just because they're treading on such holy ground.
What do they think they're doing?
I don't know.
I mean, okay, just aside from the fact that you're now going to take a Stanley Kubrick classic and you're going to make your terrible sequel to it. It's never worked. Like, Hollywood has never pulled this off, right? Remember when they tried to do their shot-for-shot remake of Psycho? Remember that?
Oh, I remember it.
Yeah.
It was traumatizing.
But they also...
And not just because of the Vince Vaughn scene that we know what we're talking about here.
Yes. But so, I mean, it's terrible when they try to do these things with classic movies, but they can't even really pull it off when they do it with movies that are just beloved, but not actually classics. You know, I'm thinking specifically of that sequel / remake they did of The Thing a few years ago, you know, that was tied in some bizarre way to John Carpenter's version of The Thing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, it never works. Why do we have to keep suffering through this?
Yeah. It's just the way it is right now. It's always pre-existing properties and comic books and sequels and prequels. At least it's not a prequel. I know you hate prequels.
Well, thank God it's a director we know we can count on.
I guess it could have been worse. It could have been a prequel that stars Ewan McGregor as the young Jack Nicholson.
Oh my God.
Okay, anyway, I don't even want to go down that road. All right, Terrence, you have some Akiva Goldsman news for us.
Oh yeah, and it's not just that his name is super fun to say.
Akiva.
Yeah. So he's also been tapped to do a 2-picture deal with Paramount where he's going to produce a new Tom Clancy series based on a supporting character from the Jack Ryan novels, who eventually got spun off to have his own novels written by Tom Clancy. And
I'm not familiar with this character, but I thought I had read that Michael B. Jordan was going to be in this movie.
Yeah, I just can't remember the character's name.
Series. John Clark?
John Clark, there you go.
John Clark.
Yes. Yeah, and you're right. Michael B. Jordan has been cast to play him, and it's a 2-picture deal, so they're taking it pretty seriously. And it makes sense because, let's be honest, the Jack Ryan character has been ground down so fine at this point that he's now just on a streaming service TV series.
Have you seen the new series?
Oh, no. No, why would I do that?
I may have bit that bullet, and I will actually I can encapsulate that series. I can't do it any better than my wife did, which is that it has the feel of a weeknight network police procedural show. And wow. The other thing I will say about that show, and I promise I'll go away from this, is it has the most horribly distracting music I've ever heard in a TV show. It's so bad and so distracting, and there's so much of it. There isn't a second in the pilot episode that goes by where there isn't some annoying noise coming out of the speaker that I think is supposed to be music, but it's actually just noise that makes everything hurt.
Well, this is another week without an Amazon sponsorship.
Thus endeth my review of the new Jack Ryan series on Amazon.
Well, hopefully the new films from Michael B. Jordan will be better.
Yeah. You also had something you wanted to talk about regarding the new Twilight Zone series that's coming out. I had not heard about this.
Oh, yeah. So I thought this was pretty cool. Jordan Peele, who is on a hot streak right now, who gave us Get Out, wrote and directed that, and then he also produced BlacKkKlansman. He's been tapped by CBS to create a new version of the Twilight Zone series. The good side is that he's going to do it the way Rod Serling did it, where he's not only going to produce it, but he's also going to host and narrate the show.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's like a nice throwback to the original show. The downside of it is it's yet another series on that CBS All Access streaming service.
Oh, God, here we go again.
Nobody anywhere has a subscription to.
Yeah.
It's the one place you can find Star Trek Discovery and the one place where you can find, nothing.
Yes.
So there's that.
Now, that, of course, again, that's a pre-existing property. But
Yes.
that one actually we sound a little bit intrigued by. It's so old, though. I guess maybe it's a little bit different because it's a take on a classic.
It is old, and I think there's been a bit of a resurgence in the whole anthology series with the success of like Black Mirror,
Right.
And in a slightly modified way, that American Horror Story series.
Yep.
So it's kind of the perfect time to take a classic from the past, and it's a recognizable brand. It makes a lot of sense for CBS to do this. But I just think the exciting thing is Jordan Peele just seems like the perfect guy for this.
Yeah, another recent anthology series that I was real excited about, but was ultimately let down by, was I think it was called Electric Dreams, which was also on Amazon.
Oh, how was the music?
Yeah, that I was pretty excited about that one, but it tried too hard to be Black Mirror and was not. So carry on.
All right. Another little piece of news that Chris teased at the beginning of the show was recently CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, did an interview with THR and discussed several things that have fans up in arms at the moment. But the one that we want to visit here today is he had some comments on the firing of James Gunn from the Guardians of the Galaxy series. Basically, it was a statement that wasn't much of a statement. He just sort of drew a comparison between James Gunn and Roseanne Barr and went on to say, in the case of Roseanne Barr, it was totally universally unanimous among everyone at Disney that they were going to let her go. He said in the case of James Gunn, the decision was unanimous among all the studio heads. They brought that decision to him and he agreed with it. So I don't want to say that's a bit of finger pointing on his part, but I mean, clearly he, is finger pointing. He's saying that, he supports the decision, but he wasn't a part of making that decision.
Yeah. Or at the very least, he wants to put it out there that it was, like a Julius Caesar thing where everyone took their stab. It was a group decision, and let's not leave any one single person culpable.
Yeah. So, and he went on to add that he has no second thoughts about that decision. So it's clear that it's sticking. Gunn is out. We knew that by this point. I don't know. It's a strange business decision. And I mean, I guess they must have felt really strongly about this, because if you're the CEO of Disney, and you make a decision that's clearly going to cost you money. I mean, it just is. It's going to cost them money when Guardians of the Galaxy 3 finally comes out. And he's doubling down on that. So, I guess I respect that conviction.
Yeah, I guess. I think like you, they're going to probably end up regretting this decision long term. But I mean, who really knows? There's so many facets to that, and of course, in the era of 2018, where there's so much sensitivity, I don't know. Maybe it actually was the right move. It wasn't. It just wasn't. Yeah.
And I mean, right now, the test case for showing of how this sort of thing can blow up in your face is Disney. It's, the Solo movie. There's this idea they have that they can just count on fans to go see whatever they make because the brand is so popular. And that just isn't the case. If you don't deliver the goods, fans walk away from it. They lost money on Solo. There's no way they're going to lose money on Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but I think it's safe to say it's probably going to be the weakest performing of the trilogy.
Probably so. After all this that's gone down, it almost seems like luck, especially since as a part of all this, there's been a massive delay that's going to put it off, at least a year from where it probably should have been released.
Right. And,
that never helps.
There's bad blood with, I think, the cast at this point too.
Clearly. Specifically Dave Bautista, but I'm sure the rest of them feel similar. They just aren't being as blatantly vocal about it as he is.
Right. And I mean, and they're all doing great in their careers. So, I mean, they're probably already just looking past those characters in that film at this point.
Yeah. One more news item I want to talk about, and this is a little bit of a departure from what we normally speak on the show, but I would say that Terrence and I both are fans of the idea of Saturday Night Live. While not actually being big fans of recent years from Saturday Night Live. Is that accurate for you?
Yeah, I think that's fairly safe to say.
I think there's a cultural touchstone element about it, obviously, that you want to hit it and see what's going on, and because everyone's going to be talking about it, and so there's that.
To be perfectly clear here, we both watch it religiously.
Yeah. I was going to get into that. Like I just want to be clear. I watch the show constantly. I watch every episode because I so desperately want sketch comedy and specifically at Saturday Night Live to be good. Yeah. And it's gotten to the point, I think anyone listening who watches the show can agree that if you get 2 solid skits, then you're doing pretty good. That's sure. Kind of where the bar has been set. So Chevy Chase, the notorious curmudgeon, was recently interviewed by the Washington Post, I believe it was. And man, he did not hold back. He's a bit of a grump these days. 74-year-old Chevy Chase, obviously one of the legendary performers from the early days of Saturday Night Live. I can't recall when he left. I think it was either season 2 or season 3, but it was in the middle of whichever season he left.
Was it acrimonious?
I don't think so. I don't think it was. To be clear, in the article, and I'm going to bring up a couple of the times where he name checks the new cast members, but I do want to mention that he spoke of his time actually being on the show very fondly. He raves about how much fun it was, how great it was, how it was hilarious, how it was legendary, how it was great television. But man, he is not a fan of the current incarnation. And he's also not a fan of sort of the more, I guess, 90s into 2000s that actually where they had a resurgence under Will Ferrell. So I'm just going to read a couple of his reactions to specific cast members here. Will Ferrell, his quote was, "Just not funny." Oh, I'm sorry, let me back that up. What about Will Ferrell doing George W. Bush? Just not funny. The guy makes $25 million a picture. Ouch. He's talking about Will Ferrell there, you know? I'm not saying the guy's, a legend or anything, but I mean that's quite a shot.
I mean, if there was a Mount Rushmore for SNL cast members, I'm pretty sure Will Ferrell knocked Chevy Chase off of it.
That is certainly a possibility. They asked him, when was SNL last funny? I'd have to say that after the first 2 years it went downhill. Why am I saying that? Because I was in it? I guess. That's a horrible thing to say. But certainly I never had more fun. I really loved it and I enjoyed it. I didn't see the same fun thing happening to the cast the next year. They asked him about Tina Fey. I liked Tina. I didn't see what all the fralderall was about. She was good. Okay. Oh. Kristen Wiig. I liked her a lot. She had 2 things going for her. She had clear-cut chops, and she was pretty, too. But what happened to her? Where'd she go? Here's a name that you may not have expected to hear on this list. Eddie Murphy. Here's Chevy Chase talking about Eddie Murphy. And again, this is Chevy Chase saying this. I thought Eddie Murphy was funny. Gumby. I found that funny and people loved that. Stevie Wonder, he did well. It's not that hard, for Christ's sake. Your skin's the same color. You just put on some sunglasses and do this. What? So yeah, he was actually effusive in his praise of Gilda Radner. He talked about Dan Aykroyd, who he said was the funniest guy on the show. And he also singled out Dana Carvey as being a funny past cast member. So, I mean... Clearly, there was also something there about how he had asked, I guess I didn't realize that he'd had a bout with sobriety, like recently. Oh. And yes, I guess that's true, yes. When he was done with that, he apparently asked Lauren if he could come on and host, and Lauren just flat out told him, "You're too old." So there's probably some of that baked into this, where he's got a bit of an agenda. So you always hate to see the legends sort of, step on themselves like that, but just kind of an ugly article. Yeah. I'm not happy to hear any of that. And I mean, I don't agree with any of it either. I mean, literally every cast member that was named in that are like, the breakout stars of their particular era on the show. Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, God knows SNL has had some bad cast members, and God knows the current cast is not one of their strongest, but none of those were referenced in any of those comments he had to make. Yeah, it hadn't been a good few years for him. I think kind of under the radar, got a little bit swept under, probably because of his age, frankly. I know that I don't know if Donald Glover was specifically asked about this and he talked about it, or if it was someone relaying stories from Chevy Chase's time on the NBC sitcom Community which was really great for a couple of seasons, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the same guy who created Rick and Morty, for you Rick and Morty fans out there.
Yeah, it was great until NBC decided to fire him.
Yeah, Dan Harmon, I think his name
Yes.
is. Yeah. So there were some stories from the set there that Chevy let some racist comments fly in the presence of Donald Glover. And this has been a couple of years ago, and that just kind of got swept under the rug and wasn't talked about much. So clearly the guy's got some issues. You know, he's older. He's clearly bitter about how things have gone later in his career. He makes it pretty clear in the article that he wants to work, but there's not a lot of people wanting to hire him right now. Big surprise. And then he goes out and he says this stuff, and I guess he'll expect that that's going to change anything.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's such a shame because, you know, he was great on Community, and that was a popular show. That really should have been a bit of a bridge for him to get back into the business.
Yep.
But I'm starting to get a sense of why maybe that isn't working out for him.
Yep. All right. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects in the world coming up here. Revenge. Not just the movie, but any revenge movie. We're going to talk about some fun revenge movies that you guys can check out if you haven't seen them. Some of my favorites, some of Terrence's favorites. And actually, I'll do a quick review of a movie actually called Revenge that was a French film. So we'll be talking about that coming up just after the break here. Revenge, so tasty, so sweet.
That's terrible dialogue. Did you write that?
I could be whispering in her ear. It could be a lot worse.
You're literally whispering it into someone's ear.
Yeah, but they like that. Okay. Revenge. Okay. So I watched this movie called Revenge. I'm just going to put this out there now. This is not going to be a long review. There will be spoilers. It's a revenge movie, though, so you kind of know what you're getting, similar to Mandy last week when we talked about Mandy. So there will be some spoilers in this review. I will put the time code in the description of the episode for when the spoilers end, if you like. So just if you're listening now and you want to see this movie, you don't want to get it spoiled, check out the description. I'll put the time code down there. Okay, all the warnings are out there. All right, this movie is directed by a French woman named Coralie Fargeat. That's my best guess at the pronunciation.
Well, I'm going to say it's perfect.
We haven't had a lot of success pronouncing French names.
Yeah, what's up, French people?
Yeah. So, in and of itself, unique that a revenge flick is directed by a woman. Can you think of another one? I can't.
Not off the top of my head, no.
So this movie is, like I said, it's French. It was shot in the Moroccan desert, and I'll tell you a couple of interesting things about it. There are 5 total actors in this movie. 5. There's no background extras. There's 5 actors. There's basically 2 locations. One is a house, and one is various locations of the Moroccan desert where they shot. So a lot of shooting outside, and then the house. Stark contrast to Mandy, which we talked about last week, which was very dark. And when I say dark, I mean visually, which is very dark visually, rich colors, that kind of thing. This is very bright colors. It takes place, I believe, in almost entirely in the daytime, which is kind of interesting. Especially with a movie that has such heavy subject matter. Usually those movies just take place at night for some reason. So almost the entire movie takes place during the day in bright sunlight. The basic rundown of the plot is, again, it's a revenge movie. It's not complicated. The movie starts with this couple helicoptering into this house, and it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that this is a man who's cheating on his wife with this woman. And he's going to be having a hunting weekend with his buddies. His buddies show up a day early. His buddies don't know about the girl. They show up. There's some awkwardness. And so they're all sort of forced to spend a night together in the house unexpectedly. Like his buddies don't know about this, and they're already like, oh, you've been cheating on your wife, that kind of thing. So some really uncomfortable things happen that set this movie off. There's... the guys are these 2 guys that showed up out of nowhere are, fawning over this girl. And then the guy she's there with leaves for part of the day, and bad things happen.
Of course.
Bad things happen.
Yeah.
So after this bad thing that happens, she survives the attack. They actually try to kill her. They aren't successful in doing that. And that sets off the chain reaction of events that lead to her revenge. One of the criticisms I have of the movie is that you have to suspend a lot of disbelief for a movie that's not science fiction or horror or supernatural, nor is it really in the feel of like a Kill Bill comic booky type of thing.
Right.
A lot of things that you look at and you just like, okay, I mean, you could rewrite that to make it more realistic without any problems at all. It would not be difficult, but you're going to go that way. Okay. That kind of annoys me a little bit with movies like that. And the screenplay, again, it's a revenge movie. Not that we should have low expectations for a screenplay, but it is pretty thin.
Right.
The director, I thought there were times in the movie where she was really teasing a style. She was really starting to establish her look and her visual style, and then she would kind of go away from it. I felt like in her head, she probably had all these ideas, and then when it came time to shoot, she backed it off a little bit to make it a little bit more of a traditional type of movie and didn't really take enough chances, because I could see a little bit of potential in the way she and her DP shot things and set things up. And then it would just be like, oh, okay, I thought this was going one way and it went another.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. All in all, if you're a fan of the revenge genre, sure, I recommend it. If you're squeamish, man, I would say that this movie actually is worse on the squeamish scale than Mandy was.
Oh, wow.
And in a way that I think some of the violence and the gore in Mandy was big and explosive, but some of the violence and the horrible things that happen in Revenge are more micro. I'll just give you one example. At some point, one of the characters gets a large shard of glass stuck in their bare foot. Yeah. And they go through this entire extended scene of him digging it out of his foot, and it is damn near intolerable.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And hard to watch. So, again, it's a revenge movie. It plays out like you probably would expect, with a couple of twists and turns. If I had to give it a star rating, I'd probably give it 3 out of 5. Again, if you're a big fan of the genre, I'd say check it out. If you want to see something that's a little bit different, especially since it just interests me that it was directed by a woman, because I've never seen anything like that. Based on those things alone, I would recommend it.
The film is in French?
It is partially English, partially French. So basically when the main character, or when the husband, the man cheating on his wife is talking to his friends, they speak French. Most of the rest of the movie takes place in English.
Okay. And is any of the cast like them throwing a bone to an American audience?
The girl, I believe, is actually an American actress.
Oh, okay.
She's American. She plays an American part. She's just like I guess I should also throw in her character is definitely flawed. And this is one of those things where, I want to be careful the way I say this, because no one ever deserves to have what happens to her happen to her. And that's not what I'm saying at all here. What I'm saying is she definitely makes some choices early in that movie that were pretty easy to avoid, that she doesn't make,
right?
That puts her in a really dangerous position. Again, that's not the same thing as having it coming, but she really should have assessed the situation a lot better, considering some of the clues that were dropped very, very early on for her, and it just ended up being a disaster.
Well, that's kind of an interesting decision for a female director to make for that character.
Yes, that's one of the things that I think is pretty interesting about it. They didn't make it black and white. Well, I mean, obviously the violence, that's what happens to her is black and white. That no one deserves it. But they didn't just make her like this super innocent, sweet girl that just got plucked from somewhere and raped and attempted to have murdered.
Right. So
I thought that was a pretty interesting decision and a little bit surprising, frankly. That first 30 minutes or so where the incident happens is a really tough watch.
Okay. And when the movie plays out, I assume that, it's a violent action-filled dispatch of those 5 guys on her part. Mm-hmm. Do we know how it is she's capable of doing that?
No. Well, no. That, again, the suspension of disbelief.
Okay.
She kind of suddenly is able to operate weaponry and
right, gotcha.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
That is easily my biggest pet peeve about the revenge genre, is when you have these characters who, set out on this operation of scorched earth revenge, and they suddenly have skills and abilities and weapons that are video game like. And you're just like, what's going on? Where did that come from?
And it wasn't so much about her skillfulness with the weapons. It's just kind of her. When you're introduced to the character you don't really get any sense that she would be familiar with how to operate them efficiently. And, she already sort of has the what looks like the movie training where she's holding the gun the way that, cops hold guns.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Sure, if you want to believe that she already had the training, great. I think in the movie she actually is trying to be an actress, if I recall correctly. But they don't go deep into that at any point, so you just kind of left to figure out yourself. I'll give you one other example of the whole suspension of disbelief thing that was actually kind of an amusing thing. She has a horrible wound in her abdomen in the movie, and she has to do that movie trope thing where she has to, cauterize the wound herself.
Ah, yes.
And it was a through and through.
Uh-huh.
So the way she cauterizes the wound is. There's an energy drink that she had with her, or that she found in the little cave that she was hiding out in, and on the energy drink was like this phoenix thing, like this rising phoenix character that's on the can,
right?
And she took the top and bottom off the can, strained it to make it kind of a square, and then heated it up and then put it over the wound, which of course left a burn mark in the shape of a phoenix.
Oh my God! Even
though it's not ridged at all, it's just a printed aluminum can,
right?
So there was a lot of stuff like that just makes you go, that's fun, but
classic.
You just felt a little dumber. Anyway, and she also didn't cauterize the other side of the wound from the through and through. So I don't really understand how that works, but anyway.
Well, you're not a doctor.
I'm no doctor, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much my walkthrough on that movie. It's not a strong recommendation unless you just really love gore, violence, revenge, and sex. Both consensual and not. So it's not like we don't pretend to love every movie that we're going to review on this show. So there you go. That's Revenge by, I'm going to try this again, Coralie Fargeat. I hope that's close.
I didn't see the movie, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it sounds bad. Don't see it.
Yeah, I don't think you would like it.
Okay, excellent.
So that clearly wasn't enough revenge, because revenge is a good thing. It's healthy.
It drives Hollywood.
It does, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite revenge movies and just mention a few others that bear mentioning, because I know a few of you out there will scream at us for not mentioning them, but we're just not big fans of them. We'll get to that in a minute. First one I want to throw out there is Old Boy. One of my all-time favorite movies.
Fantastic film. Yes.
Maybe my favorite foreign film, probably not, but if I thought about it, it's up there. Korean movie directed by Chan-wook Park. One of the great revenge movies ever. One of the angriest revenge stories ever. Awesome visually. Pretty solid screenplay. Keeps you guessing right up until the end. And it's not when you're watching the movie and you're thinking, man, this is a great revenge story, you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, and it's so unusual.
Yep.
Like every step of the way, you don't know what's going to happen next.
It doesn't look anything like an American movie, because it is not.
Yeah. It's an excellent foreign movie. If you haven't seen it, you absolutely should check it out. It's part of a sort of a revenge trilogy. I would advise that you stop at the first one, but your mileage may vary. I
think Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance was the first one, and then Old Boy was the second.
Was it?
I think. Yeah, and then there was a third one that was just okay.
I definitely saw them out of order.
Yeah. No, we definitely. I'm pretty sure we did see them out of order.
Okay,
but I'm pretty confident in saying the first of the trilogy is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, then Old Boy, and then Lady Vengeance. And I like all three of those movies, but Old Boy is far and away the best one.
Yeah,
not even close.
Yeah.
And do not confuse it with the Spike Lee remake starring Josh Brolin, the American one that was shot 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
I know for a while Old Boy was on Netflix. I don't know if it is currently. I think the remake is on Netflix. Don't get them mixed up.
Yeah.
And for the love of God, if you have to watch the remake, watch the original first.
Yeah, but don't watch the remake.
But don't watch the remake. All right, Old Boy. I'll throw another one at you. Another more recent one, Man on Fire, Denzel Washington.
Yeah, definitely comes to mind when you mention the revenge genre.
That was a Tony Scott.
Yes, it was.
Yep, Tony Scott movie. Rest in peace.
Yeah, for a while there, Denzel and Tony became a pretty strong duo.
Mm-hmm.
Tony was alternating between making more dramatic movies and then just sort of popcorn action-y movies. And he would tap into Denzel for both of those.
Yeah. They did that weird time travel movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that, but Denzel and Tony Scott and some weird time travel movie.
Yeah. Which doesn't involve revenge.
No.
When you mention Oldboy being such a great foreign revenge film, that instantly makes me think of another really great foreign revenge film, which I would argue is maybe the best foreign revenge movie ever made.
I'm listening.
And that is what's known in America as The Professional and in the rest of the world as Leon.
Yep.
Such a great movie. Luc Besson.
Yep.
And the revenge is driven by a little itty bitty Natalie Portman.
Yes, 12-year-old Natalie Portman.
Yeah, in her breakthrough role where everyone was just like, holy crap, this kid can act.
Absolutely love that movie. I can never decide what my favorite movie of the 90s is. It's always floating up there between Trainspotting, The Professional, Pulp Fiction, and Boogie Nights. It's usually one of those four, depending on which one I'd seen most recently, probably.
Fair enough.
But yeah, love that movie. That is actually on my list here as well. Gladiator, another great, more modern, recent revenge story. Russell Crowe at his peak.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Really solid script in there. Great villain in Joaquin Phoenix. I think he had kind of an underrated role in that movie.
That was the role that I first noticed him in, you know. And of course, Ridley Scott was the director. You know, that was back when he was hitting on all cylinders.
Yep. Another recent entry, Inglourious Bastards.
Yes. Hey, that's a good one.
Yep. All about Nazi killing. And man, if you like cartoon violence, then you're very satisfied at the end of that movie for sure.
It's also the movie that sort of rekindled favor for Quentin Tarantino in the minds of a lot of film buffs, myself included. You know, he had made some stuff that was still popular, but it just was, you know, it just felt like he was phoning a lot of it in. At that point, Inglourious Bastards came along and showed everyone, hey, this guy is still a powerful force in filmmaking. The script is tight. The performances that he gets out of his actors are just amazing. I mean, it's one of Brad Pitt's best performance.
For sure. It's
Christoph Waltz's absolute best performance, at least for an English film. And it's such a, well, we can go into it more at another time, but I mean, just the way that script is structured, where you have these 5 distinct chapters that are all self-contained and they don't cross over, but they do connect to each other. Just so well done.
Yeah, love that movie. That was sort of a bright, shining beacon in Tarantino's filmography, because I'd kind of not been on board with a couple of his previous movies, and that one just was like, wow. And then while we're on Tarantino, there's a couple more to mention now. Like I said, we're talking about ones we like. I'm also going to throw out some that are worth mentioning that we're not necessarily big fans of. Obviously, you can speak if you disagree. Django Unchained is another big revenge movie done by Quentin Tarantino. Wasn't a huge fan of that one. The one I know that everyone's screaming into their phones or whatever you're listening on right now is Kill Bill. I'm not a fan of Kill Bill, and I'm an even lesser fan of Kill Bill 2, which sort of makes Kill Bill the original much, much better in my mind's eye, because I really hated the second one. But I understand that that's a beloved movie, and it's obviously one of the most beloved movies of the revenge genre, period.
It's certainly very popular. I would say it's 2 good movies. If it had been one movie, it would have been a great movie.
Sure.
But it wasn't.
Well, especially if most of it was from the first movie.
Another really, really worthwhile recent entry into the revenge genre that we should probably talk about is the John Wick series.
Yep.
There's been 2 of them now. Keanu Reeves making a strong comeback in his career with those movies. And unique in that the revenge he's exacting is because bad guys killed his pet. And the one thing we know,
best inciting incident ever.
Yes, the one thing we know about movie-going audiences is you can kill 1,000 people, we shrug it off, but you kill one dog and people lose their minds.
Yep, and they do in that. Yep. That's a good pull. And I promise I have some more classic older movies coming up as well to mention here. So, yep, John Wick is a good one. I will also throw out one that I had actually forgotten was a revenge story, but it just popped into my head. Mad Max, the original.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great movie. Another one of these post-apocalyptic, flicks that I know Terrence and I are both big fans of. Love the original if you've not seen it, or if you prefer the Road Warrior or Thunderdome. Mad Max is the best one, I think. And then, of course, you have Fury Road, the more recent one, directed by the same guy, 70-something-year-old George Miller.
That's right. Yeah. The first movie is the inciting incident that launches the Max franchise. It's referred back to in the later films, but never, ever really fleshed out. It's just sort of left as a vague, shadowy reference in the later films. So you really have to watch the first one to know who this character is. And it's such a different film from the rest of the series. It's low budget, pure Australian in every way it can be, and I mean in a lot of ways just a love letter to fast cars and gasoline.
And then I would definitely term when the incident in that movie happens that creates the need for vengeance. That is a legit holy shit moment in a movie.
Yeah.
Like I specifically the thing that happens there, I did not see that coming.
Yes.
When I first saw the movie.
But don't worry, we're going to protect the spoilers on a 40-year-old movie.
Kill a baby, all right?
Okay.
All right. There you go. There.
And for some reason, that makes Mad Max. Max mad.
Yeah, everyone knew what you were trying to say there. So yeah, his wife and his child get run over by a motorcycle at full speed, and it ain't pretty. All right, another one of my personal all-time favorites, and one of my favorites of its own genre, The Outlaw Josie Wales, with Clint Eastwood.
Yes.
One of his early movies that he directed. I don't think it was his directorial debut, but might be his second movie. I think maybe he did Pale Rider before that. I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's another big one.
Well, listen, if we're going to dive into Westerns, I mean, there's
this whole revenge genre there.
Yeah, I mean, somebody once said, I have no idea who it was, but it's the truest words I've ever heard spoken about films, and that is every great Western is a revenge movie at heart.
Right.
And that's absolutely true. You know, Unforgiven, one of the greatest Westerns, are without question the best Western of the modern era.
I don't think anyone would argue with you on that. I'm trying to think of anything that might compare, and no,
the only thing that I can think of anyone suggesting would be Dances with Wolves.
Yeah,
but I don't think it holds up nearly as well as Unforgiven does.
Agree, and I like Dances with Wolves, but yeah, it's no Unforgiven.
That's a great strong revenge film. But I mean, really, you start thinking about any famous Western, and they're all basically revenge films. Right. You know, The Searchers is a revenge film. The Magnificent Seven is like a revenge film writ large. It's not revenge for an individual person or event. It's revenge for this systematic oppression that's being visited upon this village.
Sure. Another one from the 90s, somewhere around the time of Unforgiven, The Crow.
Oh.
The original Crow.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, that one had I remember that one almost as much for the soundtrack as I do the movie, because it was that time in my life, you know?
And one of those movies that, you know, just happened to cast the perfect person to embody that character and just turned it into a bit of a cultural touchstone. Side
note, because you know I'm always taking these things on quick tangents, one of the most hilariously laugh out loud horrible movies I've ever seen is one of the Crow sequels. I don't know which one, I'm sorry, but it stars Eddie Furlong as the Crow, and it also co-stars David Boreanaz. And I think Dennis Hopper is also in it.
Oh, God.
It is so incredibly horrible, but it's so bad that it actually is very entertaining if you flip past it on Sci-Fi Channel at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not saying I've done that, but I've done that.
That is a holy trinity of people who are going to make you a great bad movie.
Yeah, and I can't stress to you enough how I can't describe how bad it is. Like if you were to watch 10 minutes of it, your mouth would fall open. All right, so I have a couple of more here that I want to reach further back in time on. Here's kind of a deep pull. Carrie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The original Carrie. Which did they remake that, or they're probably, if they haven't, they're probably in the process of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sissy Spacek. Infamously, obviously, again, we don't have to worry about spoilers. It's been a long time. Literally rains down blood at the high school prom.
Right. Yes. Based on the Stephen King book.
Yep. Classic revenge story and movie. And I think I've pretty much come to the end of my list. I have one more I want to pull that is the oldest movie on the list. Yeah, probably by far. The original Cape Fear. With Robert Mitchum.
Such a good movie.
I had forgotten actually that movie was driven by revenge, where the Robert Mitchum character, I believe, was in jail for, I think it was rape, And when he gets out of jail, he goes to exact vengeance on the lawyer who convicted him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And of course, there was a famous late 80s, early 90s remake by Martin Scorsese with Robert De Niro. But man, you talk about a classic old school actor that I just think is underrated as hell, Robert Mitchum.
Yeah, for sure. Both of them are actually really good. I like both of them, but the classic one, it has that great performance by Mitchum, like you said, and it's also coupled with just really fantastic old school filmmaking. The way they had to make a film then, it just works so well for it. It gives it a very claustrophobic feel, really well done.
Yeah, I'm sure I could dig deeper and deeper into the internet and pull a bunch of more titles, but those are really the ones that sort of floated to the top.
Yeah, revenge isn't really its own genre. It crosses over, all the lines. Like we've mentioned a science fiction film, we've mentioned action movies, obviously thrillers,
westerns.
Westerns. Has there ever been a
high school teen movie with Carrie?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is also a horror movie. It really does cross over in all ways. Has there been a comedy revenge film?
I'm sure. I'm sure. Maybe we'll have to check that out. Refer to that in the future, because there must have been a failed revenge comedy story out there somewhere.
Right? Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that discussion. And you guys, if you ever want to know what, at least this is sort of a personal thing for me because I love the subgenre of revenge movies so much. Eventually, I will convince Terrence to do a similar segment on one of his favorite subgenres. So you don't get sci-fi there because that's its own genre. You're gonna have to pick your own subgenre and do something. I'm giving you a homework assignment right now, not necessarily for next week, but sometime down the line. So
revenge sci-fi.
Fine, I'll listen to it. All right, coming up next, we are going to talk about trailers. Trailer segment is back, and we're going to talk about 4 movies today. We're going to start with a new sort of post-apocalyptic sci-fi thing called Captive State, starring John Goodman, and it's directed by Rupert Wyatt, who the only title I could find, I recognize a couple of titles, but the most famous movie he's directed in the past is The Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Those movies kind of run together for me, so I'm not exactly sure which one that was, but I don't think it's the most recent one.
Okay.
I want to say like 2011, 2012, somewhere around then.
Yeah.
So this looks like again, not really post-apocalyptic, but post something really bad has happened in the world. Dystopian, we're your new overlords aliens. Kind of thing. Aliens, yeah. Sure. And, conceptually, I'm always interested in those kinds of movies, and I'd actually seen some buzz on the internet about this trailer, so I was sort of excited to watch it. When I actually watched it, I was kind of let down because there was so much, like I said, I read so much buzz about it, and it just kind of left me feeling flat. I would definitely see it. I don't know if I'm going to see it in the theater, but I would definitely watch it just because I'm interested in that subject matter.
It feels very much like a teaser trailer because it sort of sets up the story without actually revealing anything. Mm-hmm. You get the sense that, I said aliens, I don't know, there's a big flying thing in the sky. And, I've learned from Hollywood that usually means aliens, but you never see them. So, they're obviously holding something back. Like you mentioned, it stars John Goodman, which instantly made me think, oh, could this be secretly another Cloverfield movie? Yep. But watching the trailer, it doesn't look like it's a Cloverfield caliber film.
Yeah,
so.
And it's another one of these movies that I think we're seeing a lot of lately where they're interweaving sort of some political things happening in the world today loosely into the movie itself. So not to the extreme that is in the trailer, but you can see some of those things sort of wrapped in there, which I'm sure they made a decision on, probably late stages. And I say that because the entire trailer is driven by a really annoying voiceover. Maybe it's just me, but that voiceover just irritated the hell out of me. It was just prevalent through the entire trailer, and I wish it would stopped.
Clearly not ever going to be in the movie. It was something done just for the trailer.
Yeah, which is why I feel like they sort of maybe shoehorned in some of that political stuff to kind of catch the wave of all the political turmoil going on in the world right now.
So and unless they're hiding something really big for a later trailer, this seems like one of those movies that if you want to see it in the theater, blink and you'll miss it.
Right, yeah.
Most likely, the only way anyone's ever going to see it is on a streaming service.
Yep. Completely different, Mary Poppins Returns, starring Emily Blunt. I'm a big fan of Emily Blunt, like her a lot.
Absolutely.
This is directed by Rob Marshall, whose I think most famous film is undoubtedly Chicago, won an Oscar.
Great film.
Yep, and he also directed one of the bad Pirates of the Caribbean movies, On Stranger Tides. I say that because they're all bad except for the original.
That's true. The first one is a really, really good movie, and all the rest are really, really bad movies.
Yes.
And yet somehow the first three are all directed by the same guy.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how those things happen.
Who is not Rob Marshall.
So I like every other person anywhere close to our age group, of course I saw Mary Poppins. I don't remember it too well. This sort of has the feel of a remake, but maybe not really. Family film. Obviously, it's going to be released around Christmas time. Yeah. You know, it looks like kind of exactly what you might expect from that kind of movie.
I loved Mary Poppins. As a kid, that was one of my favorite live-action Disney films. So it holds a really, really strong place in my heart. And a lot of the things that I saw in the trailer, I loved. Like, it's a modern level of filmmaking, but they clearly tried to capture the feel of the old film. You know, it's very, very set bound. Clearly everything is shot on a sound stage. It's got an animated sequence just like the original one had.
Yeah, that's
it's
cool.
got Dick Van Dyke just like the original one had. I mean, it from that standpoint, they could not have done a better job of, you know, giving you all the warm, fuzzy feelings you want from nostalgia. On the flip side of that, it also suffers from something that is sort of Disney stock and trade these days, where they keep making these movies that are sequels, but in reality just remakes. You know, in the same way The Force Awakens was simply a remake of the original Star Wars, this is clearly just a beat for beat remake of the original Mary Poppins.
Sure.
Only this time the kids are the children of the kids from the first movie. And I mean, okay, obviously, that's a safe bet for them to go, and that's why they do it. But they need to not do that with everything.
Yeah, I should also mention that it co-stars Lin-Manuel Miranda as well.
Yes.
From, you know, famously popular from Hamilton.
And of course, it is a musical with lots of dance numbers, just like the original one was.
Yeah. So, you know, that might be worth checking out during Christmas season, get us in the holiday spirit. And yes, if you're out there listening and you heard Terrence say that he loved the original Mary Poppins, saying that he loved a movie, I am marking that for future use against him.
It had dancing penguins. I rest my case.
I'm just saying, people, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, I've known Terrence a long time. We've known each other a long time, been friends a long time. And I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've actually heard him say that he loves a movie. So that sort of took me by surprise. Blade Runner, Taxi Driver, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Mary Poppins.
They're penguins. They're adorable.
All right, next one up. Heavy Trip. This just sort of came out of nowhere. I walked in from the other room, and Terrence was watching this trailer. I didn't even see the beginning of it. So
that's how I do.
Yeah, so why don't, since you so selfishly started it without me, why don't you describe that one a little bit?
So it's a comedy from Finland. So it's in, I don't know, Finnish? But it's a fun kind of low budget movie where this Finnish death metal band is trying to get to a show in Norway, and you know, all sorts of things go wrong, and the main character, who I believe is the lead singer of the band, or maybe he's just the lead guitarist, doesn't matter. You know, he's fallen in love with another girl in the village. It's a small Finnish village, you know, and there's all the sorts of, you know, like he's not good enough for her parent because obviously he's in a metal band. And the thing that's funny about it is it has a lot of the comedy beats that you would expect from any sort of rom-com or, you know, the band trying to make it to the big show kind of a movie, but it's all slightly different than the way it plays in an American movie.
Sure.
You know, the foreign movie element of it just somehow takes something that would be a chuckle-worthy joke in a typical movie and just makes it seem way more outlandish and funny to me in this. Yeah,
I gotta say, I'm actually pretty excited about that one. Who knows if it'll actually have any kind of run in theaters here, but I'll definitely be renting that when it's available. We'll have to watch that one together. You know, I think, again, I'll just clue you in. We're sort of metal guys from back in the day. Never really the death metal guttural stuff. I've never been a fan of any of that, but the movie just looks funny and fun. And the fact that it stars no one that I know at all and looks like like you said, sort of a fresh take on a genre that doesn't get a whole lot of exposure, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and it's very rare that a comedy from a country that's not in English plays well, because comedy just it's hard to translate over. But it looks like they're trying really, really hard to make it work in a way that English-speaking audiences are going to get just as much from it. I don't know, it just looked fun.
Yeah, and I usually, I always with the trailers, I always want to mention who the director is so we can real quickly discuss a couple of other movies just to give you guys a frame of reference for what they've done before. I looked at the name of the two guys that directed this movie and I just ejected immediately because there's lots of consonants colliding and
too many letters
and umlauts and dots and punctuation that don't belong where they are on the name if you're an American. So I just sort of, pulled the ripcord on that. Anyway, so that looks like fun. I'll check that one out.
I would like to apologize to anyone from any Scandinavian country. And please, Amazon, we're sorry too.
I could have tried to say the name and butchered it. What do you want from me?
All right, fair enough. I want you to scream it in a death metal voice. That's what I want.
Yes, and Amazon, we're definitely waiting for your call for sponsorship.
Especially Scandinavian Amazon.
Yeah. Amazon, I'm really looking forward to watching 10 Star. I'm going to check that one out. And anyway, so yeah, I hope that made up for earlier. Anyway,
it's going to buy the soundtrack to the Jack Ryan series.
Anyway, that's like a Tim Roth thing that's premiering that looks pretty cool. Tangent again. Last one. All right, Captain Marvel.
There you go, the big one.
Yeah, the big one. So just real quick, I have no idea if this is right or not. I cannot confirm because there was no source, but someone on Twitter said that this was apparently there's a metric out there. Well, there's obviously a metric out there, but someone's tracking this. The amount of views or downloads or however you want to term it for a trailer within its first 24 hours. This is the number 11 movie of all time as far as the number of downloads in the first 24 hours or views in the first 24 hours, and it's the number 4 MCU movie of all time in that way, which is behind the two of the Avengers movies and Thor Ragnarok. So this one stars Brie Larson, who was in Room. I believe she won an Oscar for that. I actually like her a lot. I was kind of excited to see her getting this role.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of hers as well.
Good. It's directed by a directing duo, male-female duo, Anna Bodden and Ryan Fleck.
Red flag.
I looked at their filmography, and really the only thing I kind of recognized on there is that they directed several episodes of The Affair and Billions, which are two shows that are on Showtime. So kind of strange. And again, we have come across this before where a huge movie gets handed over to someone that doesn't seem to have the resume to support having this huge movie. Yes. And this is not like, this movie's a big deal. It's going to be a huge, huge hit.
The Marvel movies have tapped television directors in the past, but it's always been clear why. Like, there's never been a situation where that was mysterious. Like, okay, you're going to make a Thor movie. Yeah, get the guy who directed a bunch of Game of Thrones episodes. That makes perfect sense. But in this case, I don't know.
Yeah, and the trailer, I was intrigued by it. Like, I mean, I'm gonna see every Marvel movie that comes out. I'm gonna, and that's not just a Marvel thing. That's just like, any big deal movie that comes out, we're just gonna see it because that's just who we are. Even if we know we're not gonna love it, we're gonna see it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm gonna see this, but I'll be honest. That trailer did nothing for me.
Nothing at all, huh?
No, it lacked any hook for me to take an interest in the character or the story that they were telling. It basically looked like a bunch of scenes, this time set in the 90s, because apparently the movie is, at least a portion of it takes place in the 90s. But they're all scenes we've already seen in Marvel movies. There's the alien invasion. There's the fight on top of a moving subway. I've seen those things. That's great that you've got them in the movie. I realize you have to have things that blow up and you have to have people to blow them up. But I need a hook. I need something that says this is why this one is unique. And they've always done that with all their other characters, especially in the standalone movies. Ant-Man was funny. Thor was good looking. There's always been that hook, but I don't know. This one just didn't really push any button for me.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. All I can say is, I like Brie Larson, so I'm interested to see this. I'm interested to see a female-led superhero movie, just because, DC did their thing with Wonder Woman, and like you and I have talked about, it's unbelievable that Black Widow wasn't the first standalone female-led
Baffling
MCU movie. But this is, so I'm excited about it, at least to a degree.
Mentioning Wonder Woman is the perfect comparison for what I was saying. I mean, with Wonder Woman, you've got this great hook. They show you that, she comes from this island, and that movie is also a period movie. It takes place during World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it just felt like there was so much more in that trailer to make me say, whoa, there's a lot to learn about Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this movie, it just felt so thin. Like I had no questions at the end of it.
You didn't identify with the character when she punched an old lady in the mouth?
Well, okay, fair enough. I
feel like that would be your superpower.
The one moment.
Punching the elderly.
That is...
It's true. Is what the word you're looking for is truth.
Folks, do you think for a moment that a person who thinks penguins are adorable would ever strike an elderly person?
Repeatedly.
No. What?
I'm not saying I've seen it, but anyway. Yeah.
All right, I'm in. I'll go see the movie. Let's go right now.
So Captain Marvel. Yep. That we'll see. It's coming out in March, I think, is when they said it was coming.
Long wait.
Which is, March of 19. So it's sort of in between the winter releases and the summer releases, in that little time that they used to refer to in Hollywood as dumping season, where they would just get everything off their slate that wasn't testing well and that was going to lose them money. But it seems like that sort of is a bit of a antiquated term now, I think.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the summer blockbuster season has moved up in the year. It starts a lot easier and actually peters out, or starts a lot earlier, but also easier, and then peters out a lot earlier as well. So I think now March is kind of where it kicks off, and they seem to try to front load the summer season a lot more these years than they used to.
I feel like they always used to be early June, and then I remember when they reached into May and then April, and now we're getting into March.
Yeah. There's no end in sight. I do want to say one last thing about that trailer. If you're not a big superhero fan and you don't really particularly care about this movie, it's still worth watching the trailer just to see the technology that has them de-aging Samuel L. Jackson from his current age to what he looked like in the 90s. It's amazing. Like, it looks like they're using footage stolen from one of the many movies he made in the 90s.
For sure.
And it's him. It's current Samuel L. Jackson playing that role, and then they go in with their magic computers and they make him look young. It's amazing that it works so well. It's amazing that it's high def close-ups right in front of your face. And it just really raises some interesting questions about where this technology is going to lead Hollywood in the next 10, 20 years.
And I haven't confirmed this myself, but I heard secondhand that, if there's a third host to this show, it's outrage. And apparently there's some light outrage out there.
Oh, good.
Of course, that Sam Jackson has far more dialogue in the trailer than Brie Larson does. And so people are apparently mad about that.
Wow.
So I don't think we need to react to that. I'm just going to throw it out there because our friend Outrage hadn't made an appearance yet this week.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Well, hey, here's a little news for Outrage. Guess what? Bet you almost 100% Samuel L. Jackson making more money in this movie than Brie Larson.
That is probably true. Oh boy. Yeah. All right. So Captain Marvel looks like, I think it looks good. We'll see. It only, time will tell. It's going to hold everyone over, I guess, until the next big release, which this summer, I guess the final chapter for Infinity War is coming out this coming summer. So that's going to be the only thing to tie you over until that time. So, all right. Any closing thoughts this week? I think we've covered a lot of interesting topics, and I've run out of things to say. Unless you want to talk about your predilection for punching the elderly again.
Dancing penguins.
Fine. All right, guys. Appreciate you listening. We will do it again next week, and have a great week, and we'll talk to you then.
They're wearing tuxedos. They're penguins wearing tuxedos, dancing.